that by the end of the day, the North got pushed back about 2 miles to a range of hills that they called the Gettysburg fish hook line. Are you all familiar with that? The fish hook battle line. Okay, good. So we're going to leave the hook and then we'll come back to it. Then we'll see on day 2, the Southern Army tried to attack the North on both ends of the hook, trying to crush the North from the ends. We'll see, but that didn't work. Then on the 3rd day, he went right up the middle. I heard you've already done Pickets Charge. Is that right? You actually walked the field. Oh, very good. Very good. That's a great thing to do. That's a lot of groups don't get a chance to do that. I think that's wonderful. You got a chance to do that. So we're going to get on and off the bus here to see some things up close. But I always say just bear in mind it's a big battlefield. And it does cover about 25 square miles of territory. And we have out here over 1,300 monuments. So one of the toughest things you'll see about guiding is trying to get back on time. You know, somebody pointed out to me, I didn't realize this, but we have 120 generals in this battle. Imagine that. So see, if you spend 1 minute talking about each general, there's your 2-hour tour right there, without mentioning anything else. So you'll see every tour of Gettysburg, you have to simplify that, and we're going to try and do that for you here today. Okay? Now, you know, I don't know if you realize that this is a great battlefield, and the fact that especially that they started preserving it right away. They had a man who started buying up land here in the same month the Battle of Gettysburg was fought. His name was David McConney. And he saw that the farmers were beginning to tear down the entrenchments that the soldiers had built up. And he thought, you know, this is history. He thought, what better way to honor the soldiers that fought here than preserving the actual land they fought on and fought for. So with that idea in mind, this man started buying up that fish hook line. He bought a Culp's Hill off to the right, Cemetery Hill going up now, in Little Round Top in July of 1863. So I think right up here on the right, just a second, you can still see these cannons over here on the right. And they had the little dirt mounds around the cannon. And this is what this man was trying to preserve, you see, to preserve those dirt mounds. So understand these things are not untouched, but they're right there where those cannons would have been 147 years ago. So what's great is when you run across these stories about Gettysburg, you can run around the field and find those places. It's all pretty much still here. So they talk about jumping over 2 stone walls, you can find those walls. You know, if somebody got shot out of a house, you can find the house they're talking about. Now, you know, just down here on the right, this red brick house is where Jenny Wade was killed. And you heard she was the only civilian killed during the battle, right? You all heard about that? You know, after day 1, she would have been right between the 2 battle lines. The North, after the first day, rallied at Cemetery Hill behind us. The South stopped down here in town in front of us, so Jenny's right in the middle of it. So she was struck down on the 3rd day by a stray bullet. But now, did you ever hear anybody that there were other townspeople killed after the battle? Other civilians killed after the battle's over. How would that happen? How do you get killed after the battle's over? Anybody want to guess? Yeah, just a minute. Yeah, right back here in the back. Yeah. Yes. They died. Well, a lot of people died of wounds. These people were killed.
Other troops marched through.
Or other troops marching through might kill somebody from the other side. Well, that's a good guess. Disease. When these people were killed, but there probably were people that died of disease. Ah, there we go. Unexploded cannonballs. Imagine a boy here in town found a cannonball. He's trying to open it up to see how it worked. He blew himself up. There were also 20,000 loose rifles all over this big battlefield. And he said that half the rifles are still loaded, you see. And so the soldiers are piling them up in these big piles so they could find them and use them over again. And some man was trying to steal a rifle out of this pile of rifles and pulling it right towards himself. He went off and killed him. You can actually see newspaper clippings for years after the battle. Some poor farmer just out there plowing his ground by himself, and all of a sudden he hits a cannonball like a landmine and blows himself up. So potentially dangerous even here today. But it is amazing that even though the biggest battle of the war went right through the town, only 1 civilian killed during the battle. So a lot of interesting near misses you can read about. I always love this one story about this woman. She lived on this street. She was going up into the attic of her house to watch the battle. At the last minute, she changed her mind and was coming back down the steps again, and a cannonball went ripped right through the attic wall and chased her down the steps. And this thing landed right in front of a group of people and did not explode. Just straight, yeah. But they said that this, they asked this passing soldier to take this shell out of the building. So he did. And then they said, you know, we ought to keep that thing. So they asked him to bring it back. And they kept it as a souvenir. So I'm told they put another shell back in the wall where the original shell had hit. I'm told the original shell is only a 10-pound shell. The one that's in there now is a 20-pound shell. But I think we're going slow enough now that the folks on the left side of the bus might get a chance to see their shell. It's on the next block coming up. So let me set the scene for you there, and we'll see if you can spot it. It's a little hard to see for the folks on the right, so we're going to show you another one here on the right side of the bus.
Oh, cool.
Okay, but on the next block, we're going to see an alleyway, and a do not enter sign going into the alleyway. And you'll see in the alley a dark telephone pole. If you look straight up above that, you'll see that shell we were talking about.
We'll watch.
So look right up ahead now on the left. Halfway down this block, you'll see the do not enter sign for the alley. If you look down the alley, you'll see the telephone pole. Look straight above it. Looks like a black metal pipe. Now look straight above the dark telephone pole.
Oh, I see it. I didn't see it.
Anybody see it?
No.
Well, see, that was a fun thing when I first moved to Gettysburg myself to see if I could find all 9 of those cannonballs. So it actually needed a little help the first time, but if you ever come back around here, you'll see you can hunt up the other 8. Now we're going to try and show you one more here in just a moment. It's a little bit easier to see because we can actually stop so you can see it. That one there we're not allowed to stop with all the traffic going by, okay?
Awesome, right side.
Yeah, this one will be on the right side.
Booyah!
Give me a couple minutes to show you, okay? Now you might have noticed already that the buildings that were here during the battle have a little metal plaque on the house saying it's a Civil War building. So we've got about 200 buildings from the war still with us. And see, some of our guys that love to read about the civilians and what happened to them. I think one of my favorite civilian stories is about this one woman. She was on the back balcony of her house watching the battle that first day. All of a sudden, she saw Northern troops rushing past the front of her house. So she ran around to the front of her house to cheer the men on. And they said right then a cannonball exploded right there at the balcony. She just left. But since she left, she was okay. And they said that same house is struck 2 other times by cannonballs. And they said that each time, it's just after she left the room. And so what's really amazing, this woman named Catherine Foster later moved out to Johnstown, Pennsylvania. And she actually survived the Johnstown flood, too. But we're going to show you that that's amazing, that she survived 2 catastrophic events in American history, both the Battle of Gettysburg and the Johnstown flood. And I'll tell you a little thing I didn't know. I just found it out this winter. She's buried back here. I thought she was buried out in Johnstown. But no, she was an only child, I guess, and she never married. So her parents are buried at Cemetery Hill, so she's buried with them. So Catherine Foster, the woman that survived these 2 catastrophic events, is still buried here in Gettysburg. So this one visitor made a good point about her. They said when she gets up and leaves the room, go with her. A good point. Yeah, that's a good piece of advice back then. Now also, let me point out to you that you might not know this, that they started to mark the battlefield of Gettysburg right away. They had a professional historian who came here while they're still bleeding on the battlefield. And he would go out with these men while they're still recovering from their wounds. He'd ask them, where were you? And they would tell him, and they'd mark out the spot. First on a map, and then as they began buying land up, they put wooden stakes in the ground, and eventually put up these different monuments we're going to see today. So something really special about Gettysburg, you'll see, we'll show you some of these little things that look like tombstones. They're called flank markers. The flank is the end of your line. And I'm trying to show you our line of battle went from right here to right there. And I've only seen in my travels one other battlefield that has flank markers. That's down in Chancellorsville battlefield down in Virginia. We only found 1 regiment that had it. That's pretty special here at Gettysburg. They marked it out that well and that soon.